हेलो, आज हमारे साथ हैं अक्षय चतुर्वेदी, द फाउंडर ऑफ LeverageEdu, and today we'll be talking about what are the skills that companies are looking for. If you are looking for a high growth career, then what do you need to build in you? Thank you, Akshay, for joining us.
Thank you, Sahil. It's my pleasure to be at the Rishihood campus, and it's a fascinating campus. Congratulations on all that you guys have done over the last 4 years.
Thank you so much. तो मैं आज आपसे थोड़ा आपका बैकग्राउंड और आपको किस तरह के स्किल्स छोटे स्टूडेंट्स में देखने को you look for them. That is what I would like to know from you. So Akshay, when I went to your website today morning, आपने ऊपर लिखा है we are hiring. So can you give us a brief of your company? आपके अभी कितने लोग हैं? What's the business size? How many students you have enabled going abroad, so that our audience has some context?
Sure. Thank you again for having me. As of right now, today Leverage we employ about 1,200 folks in our HQ in Noida, and then we have small teams built out across 10 cities in India, and then we have micro teams in the cities of London, Sydney, Toronto, and Boston right now, who essentially do enterprise sales, work with the universities, ensure that when a student lands in that geography, and they take care of them, and they kind of ensure that they are leading, they're setting themselves up for success as they kind of move to a new campus in a new university in a new country. So that's pretty much how the team is structured out. And today, as of right now, this year, we will send about closer to 20,000 plus students
in 1 year
across universities, across countries all over the world. And primarily, our business now is about 65% of our business is helping students figure out what they want to do, counseling them to get to a university program of their choice. And the remaining part is helping them with things that make them successful. So education loan, tuition fee payment business, forex remittance business, accommodation business, and now increasingly other services that they need once they kind of land abroad. Starting with a debit card, starting with food services for the first couple of months and things like that. So there's a student recruitment business, and then there's a platform business,
which is many value-added services that you are
correct, which is ensuring that they set up for success and they can focus on really making their life worth something which is in line with our mission at Leverage, that we really want to build global citizens for the world.
Perfect. So that's a very big sizable company. So when you are hiring now, what are you looking for? Because I'm keen to understand that if a young person is getting into education right now, what kind of skills they need to build so that they are prepared for growth careers.
While we're hiring across multiple roles, I think if I, without being too specific, if I can kind of really think about what has gone well for us in the last few years is hiring a lot of generalists. And hiring them for their innate talent rather than kind of a specific talent. So if I've kind of divided into a few things, it could be ability to be curious. Curious about how things operate, curious about understanding different things, curious about the size of a problem, curious about how we can innovate in this market, how we can differentiate ourselves in this market, how we can really obsess about doing better for the student every successful day. So ability to be curious, ability to really structure down problems. So if I can really kind of, because as you kind of build a company at a certain speed, in a certain environment, as disruptive from macroeconomics perspective as the world that we live in right now, that means a lot of things are always changing. तो पहले के ज़माने में हम काफ़ी businesses वगैरह build करते थे. Traditional businesses, you would have that, they would always say that I don't like surprises. So they would hence want to be in licensed businesses where there are no surprises, things are not changing. एक बार चैनल सेट कर दिया तो कर दिया, एक बार डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेट कर दिया तो कर दिया. पता है कस्टमर यहाँ से जाएगा, यहाँ डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर यहाँ पे जाएगा, इतना मेरा मार्जिन बनेगा, भी मेरे को दिमाग कम लगाना है हर साल, थोड़ा थोड़ा इंक्रीज करना है incrementally. Whereas the kind of businesses that we guys are building right now, most people like me and us, they have a lot of challenges which essentially surface up in different ways every single year. चैनल भी बदल जाता है, जोग्राफीज बदल जाती हैं, आप कुछ नया चीज़ कर रहे हो, आप कुछ नए एक्सपेरिमेंट्स कर रहे हो. That means that you have to be very adaptive, and that means you have to have that skill built out to be able to, like I said, adapt to different problem sets, but also to structure down and understand how to kind of
break down
this problem into absolutely bite-sized, solvable items, and said, okay, this is how it's going to be solved as I move forward. So ability to be curious, ability to structure things, and I would say the last thing is ability to really think with a long lens, ability to commit. To say that, you know what, I am marrying myself to this mission / vision / problem set for the next 3 to 5 years. Because I see a lot of people who very unfortunately still think about let me do this and then let me kind of figure out doing that for the next 10% increment and then doing that for the next 20% increment. I remember a mentor of mine when we were raising our seed round or Series A round a few years back. He said that, Akshay, if you should define your success by the number of people who want to return back to the company. So मेरे दिमाग में तब से फिट है वो कि कितने लोग वापस आते हैं. तो आज की डेट में 37 लोग वापस आए हैं. It's not a big number, but I keep that number. I keep that count. So a lot of people essentially went from us to maybe a larger company or went from us to a smaller company. And then we essentially kind of pulled them back in because they could see that there's a certain culture that we had created, there's a certain way in which we were kind of empowering people to solve problems for themselves, a certain freedom that we were giving. There was certain style in which they were functioning where they felt that यार बहुत hard है, यहाँ पर तो 6 दिन 7 दिन काम करना पड़ता है, यार यहाँ पे 12 घंटे काम करना पड़ता है. But then they kind of went into a certain other atmosphere with the realized that यार यहाँ पे मेरे काम का कुछ purpose नहीं है, या फिर यहाँ पर I'm a cog in the wheel. And I think that really kind of changed their perspective. So I really believe, and this is not just for Leverage, this is for any company, this is for Rishihood University, this is for any other startup, this is for any medium-sized startup as well. If you are really excited about being at a place which is going through a growth phase, you commit to that. You're very sure about you want to join that place and you commit to that for the next 3 to 5 years.
Right.
क्योंकि फिर आपके जो पर्सनल इंक्रीमेंटल गोल्स भी आपके जो होंगे ना वो भी सारे अचीव हो जाएंगे साथ साथ. So I would a lot of things, but I would kind of put that into these three things.
That's very interesting. और जो आपकी जर्नी रही है, I mean, scaling up LeverageEdu to such a big company, so I'm sure you
still small, yeah, still starting up.
would you yourself have picked up many of these habits, attitudes, skills. So if I have to ask you to reflect back on your journey कि आपने इस तरह के skills कब pick up किए? Was it your education? Did you get some mentorship? Yeah, was it learning through failures? What enabled you to pick up those skills? Because there is something we can find a pattern and enable those skills, in students.
So okay, if I have to think about again, I'm a big fan of structuring things. So I have to kind of again structure this answer. I was a hustler of sorts before I went to business school. Business school, essentially, I wasn't the most academic student. I was definitely on the other side of things. But I had friends who came from environments where they were taught to really follow the laws of physics in actual life. So while I was a non-science student in my life, I started reading a lot of physics in 2014-15 and started like very much what I expect right now from people I bring on board Leverage. Started structuring problems in a bite-sized manner and kind of trying to figure out, okay, this is how you solve for something in a very granular way, and you start to kind of fall in love with details. So I think that is supremely important. That is something that I don't think I had in the early stages of my life. For the first 3 to 5 years of my professional career, I was more of I used my energy to kind of go out and drive things and kind of drive people, drive teams, and then kind of just get somewhere. At a certain point of time in my life, because of education, because of the intervention of education, because of intervention of many professors, many like case study method, or spending time with friends like Shobit and others, I would have essentially developed appreciation for going granular. So I think that was definitely the intervention of education. So education is one. Second, I think is there's a form of continuous mentorship that you essentially mentorship is also a game that you really need to learn how to play with absolute respect.
Correct.
Because I see a lot of people who would say that hey, can you be my mentor, blah, 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 LinkedIn pe dal diya, kahin mein pe dal diya. I had my first mentor, I found him at the age of 17. And I was, in fact, it's a guy I'm meeting right now after this. And he was a CFO of American Express back then. And I kind of really chased him down, can I really meet you, can I really meet you? And then if he would give me some suggestion, I would kind of really implement it.
So was there anything particular that you liked about him that you chased him to be your mentor? Because finding a mentor is also not a straightforward thing.
So I think at different points of time in your life, you need different kinds of mentors. At that point of time, I was really fascinated by somebody who was a CFO at a large firm and who had studied at a big business school. I had gone to I had not gone to a tier 1 undergraduate school. So I used to kind of really admire people who had the best academic brands behind themselves. So that was me at 17, the way I was thinking about it, right? Or 18. And so I found this guy, he would have helped me with a bunch of things, helped my thinking process evolve to a certain degree. In 2013, I really wanted to apply to the top US schools. I applied to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. All three of them told me to get lost. Fortunately or unfortunately, I ended up going to IS.
It worked well for you.
It worked well for me. I went to ISB and I met people like Shobit, and that's why I'm here. Because I wanted to go to Stanford, I had written to a lot of people who had been at Stanford. So I wrote to a lady called Heidi Roizen, who was a partner at DFJ Venture Partners.
Okay.
DFJ was early investor in Hotmail, Skype, Tesla, SpaceX. And by the way, she has a podcast and she's speaking somewhere in, I think, YC or somewhere. This video from 2016-17 where she speaks about this incident as well. So I reached out to her and I said that, hey, can you be my mentor? She said, no, I'm really busy and like I'm a partner at a venture firm. I was like, okay, can you just give me like 10 minutes every single month? I think maybe I was polite and maybe I was respectful, and on a whim she said okay. And she says in this thing that she's saying in 2016-17, the 6-year-old video, that she did not expect that I will follow up. But I followed up like a crazy maniac. I would every 15th by default write to her and say that, okay, these are my questions in life and this is what I'm thinking about.
For your 10-minute call.
हाँ?
For your 10-minute call.
कॉल नहीं होती थी, ईमेल इंटरेक्शन होता था.
Okay.
एंड शी वुड से कि मतलब ऐसे ऐसे है. हर 15 को मैं लिखता था. 2 साल रिलेशनशिप बिल्ड हो गई एंड आई वेंट टू ISB. एंड ISB के अंदर हम एक दिन कुछ एक केस स्टडी पढ़ रहे थे एंड द केस वाज अबाउट हाइडी रॉयसन. आई हैड नो आइडिया दैट शी वाज दैट बिग. देयर वाज अ केस स्टडी ऑन हर. देयर वाज अ हार्वर्ड केस स्टडी on her and how she had navigated her own life, her own career. She was a networking genius and she had brought Microsoft and Apple together in the late 90s and a lot of those other interesting things. And I wrote to her, मैंने कहा मुझे तो पता ही नहीं था आपके ऊपर केस स्टडी है. I really had no idea at that point of time. And she said, yeah, like anybody else who had written to her with that frame of mind that आपके ऊपर केस स्टडी है, मैं business school में पढ़ रहा हूँ, it would have been a very different conversation versus what I would have had as a 22-year-old when I was kind of just thinking about applying to Stanford. And then few months later, I think in November 2014, she said that you always wanted to be in Silicon Valley because she knew how I operate by then, and you wanted to come here to study. So, एक fellowship चल रही है US के अंदर, which the Draper system is running. Why don't you apply for that? I will put in a recommendation.
Okay.
I applied for that, and that's how I ended up being in the US. I was there for this fellowship,
You were a
and that's how Leverage was founded.
Okay.
At this fellowship,
At
we
the
got a
Draper
first $10,000
Okay.
non-dilutive funding in the Draper fellowship.
Okay.
Things like these happened, and over time I've realized that I had somebody who I found in 2016, I had somebody then I found in 2017. My board member today, Karthik of Bloom Ventures, he's a massive mentor figure in my life. I was with him till late last evening in Bombay. I take trips to kind of just go and spend time with him. And I found other mentors also alongside my journey. I have a board member called Karan Khemka. I was with him in Bali 2 weeks back, and we were doing a lot of whiteboarding. And he got a bunch of people out there from all across the world to help me. So I think, and like I said, you commit to long-term relationships in life, and you commit to being open to learn, and you often think about you have to essentially also recognize what you need at a certain point of time in life to be able to move to the next level.
I think this is extremely important because generally when we look at finding mentors, we look at it very transactional, kind of a way that I want this and a mentor will.
And maybe you can also help your mentor with a bunch of things.
Yeah, possible.
I've tried to do that always in my life.
Possible. I think this aspect of building long relations where both the mentee and the mentor are finding value in spending time with each other. I mean, if you're going to Bali to whiteboarding, that's quite something.
So he lives in Bali, so I went there. He sold his company, now he lives in Bali, serves there.
Yeah, so another thing that you mentioned was that you were a hustler of sorts. And when we look at jobs in any startup, they're looking for hustlers. So ये hustler क्या होता है?
I think hustler का सबसे easy translation यही है कि जो कुछ भी करके मतलब हथौड़ा मार के दीवार के थ्रू दीवार तोड़ देता है और काम करवा देता है. Because I think what startup folks are looking at is they realize that what we're trying to solve for is most likely impossible. 99% startups are going to fail. वैसे ही मेरा 1% चांस है सक्सीड होने का. तो मैं अगर कुछ काम मैं तरीके से करूँगा प्रोसेस बना के वो तो नहीं होने वाला. मैं कुछ उल्टा सीधा करूँगा, मैं कुछ जैक लगाऊंगा, मैं कुछ जुगाड़ करूँगा तभी हो पाएगा. So for example, in our early days, we had no money for marketing. We had no money for telling people about ourselves. So we did guerrilla marketing of sorts. कोई और कुछ कर रहा है, हम उसके वहाँ पे घुस गए, फ्लायर बांटने शुरू कर दिए. उसने बोल दिया भगा दिया वहाँ से, अबे तुम क्या कर रहे हो, ये मेरा इवेंट है. कहीं और घुस गए, किसी के कुछ चल रहा है, कुछ इवेंट चल रहा है, वहाँ पे यूनिवर्सिटी से बात करने लगे. So you essentially find out different ways of just getting things done. And I think that is a very that is a great skill to have at a certain point of time in life. it can also
Then
hurt
we have to graduate from there.
You have to graduate from there. If you don't graduate, then you are like, "Aapki lag gayi boss."
Yeah.
So I have also kind of gone through that hard graduation phase in my life.
Yeah.
And I've also helped people who have worked with me to graduate from there. कि अरे बच्चे हो गया अब अभी प्रोसेस से करना है काम अभी प्रोसेस इंपॉर्टेंट है क्योंकि अगर तू प्रोसेस से नहीं करेगा तो आप बाकी आने वाले 100 लोगों को क्या सिखाएगा वो क्या सारे हसल थोड़ा करेंगे So I think at different points of time I think you still need a combination of, for example, I was speaking about somewhere where I'm going 2 weeks from now, right? And I'm mostly going to hustle there because I don't have a structure to follow there. I go to a lot of other places where I have a certain structure in which I operate, and I go as per my calendar. But this is something which I don't know, so I'm going to hustle my way around, figure out how to make sense of things, and then gradually put a structure around it. So I think there has to be a combination of that. But I think if I have to kind of again circumvent through all of this and have to define it very clearly, I think hustlers are people who are driven by an inexplicable energy to just go and make things happen. And they just make things happen come what may.
I think all kinds of companies and organizations are looking for people who make things happen. I mean, that's like the number one point in JD, any JD that we can have now.
Correct. And for example, if I want to, for example, experiment with something new, I know that there's a certain kind of person who I can bring in to build more processes, take the company from 10 to 50 and 50 to 100 and 100 to say 1000. But there's only a certain type of people who can essentially do the 0 to 1 and can do crazy things and experiment with a new idea. So for example, मेरा एक ड्रीम रोल होता था Uber के अंदर, launcher बोलते थे प्रोग्राम को. तो even when Uber was a few $1 billion, they had this role for a launcher, somebody who had to go to a new city and start Uber operations in that city. And then gradually in the first 6 months, they would essentially hire a GM who would lead the entire city, then a marketing manager and an operations manager. Then gradually other teams around it. But
there was a formal role called
launcher. Even when Uber was a few $1 billion, Travis had put together, who I think about in a very high respected way. And hence they were able to kind of grow so fast because they had these launchers, 60-70 of them all across the world, who were just kind of going about and launching new cities across Asia, across LATAM, all of those places.
आपने अपनी कंपनी में भी ट्राई किया ऐसा रोल?
हमारी कंपनी में है ऐसे 3-4 लोग जो लॉन्चर्स हैं और नए बिजनेसेस और नई सिटीज आके खोल रहे हैं. आई स्टिल हैव टू काइंड ऑफ टेक इट टू द सेम लेवल एज Uber did. That's my dream.
Great. One last question from my side. आपने बताया you were 17-18 year old and you started having these aspirations and started doing some things. I am personally a believer in starting early. I mean, the earlier we start, the better path we have. So, have you validated this in your experience कि जो लोग आपकी कंपनी में आए, you've seen them grow? Was an early start helpful? या ऐसी हैं हसलिंग वगैरह ऐसी चीज़ें हैं, प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग, क्यूरियोसिटीज जो बाद में भी पिकअप की जा सकती? मतलब मान लो मैं ग्रेजुएट हो गया, मैं 20 स्कूल कंप्लीट कर लिया, मेरे को 10 साल का वर्क एक्स है, अब मुझे पता लगा कि हसल भी करना होता है और प्रॉब्लम भी सॉल्व करनी होती है और क्यूरियस भी रहना होता है. इज इट पॉसिबल या इट्स प्राइमरली स्टार्टिंग अर्ली इज अ...
I have a bias. I would say you definitely have, if you do this early on in your life, I think it's helpful. It's difficult to switch when you are 10-15 years into the game and you're working at a big company. It's difficult to make switch to a small company. नहीं समझ में आता, लगता है कि क्या वाहियात बना यार, ये स्ट्रक्चर ही नहीं है, क्या है, स्टार्टअप के नाम पे कुछ भी चल रहा है. And people are not able to adapt. I have made the mistake of hiring people like that and then very respectfully, or even at least I would like to think respectfully, tried to kind of say tata to them because they never understood that we have a certain culture in the certain speed at which we like to do certain things. There are people who have kind of joined us early. There is Samrat behind the camera right now, who joined us as his first company some 5.5-6 years back. And he has kind of gone through some 5 or 6 roles in the company. And today he's like here with me, and there are a bunch of people like him. The people who have kind of graduated on to do different things. Somebody has become an influencer, somebody is doing something else, somebody is like gone about and like built a teaching career. So I think there's definitely value in joining a small company. I think when you join a company which is, say, not even what Leverage is today, but you join a company which is, say, less than 10 people, less than 50 people, the sheer brickbats that you get at a stage like that, जहाँ पे मतलब जिंदगी literally आपको मतलब पकड़ के मार रही है, what you learn from that experience is absolutely incomparable, and I think that is very useful in terms of anything that you want to do in life thereafter.
Correct. That's a very useful insight. So if I have to reflect on the whole discussion we had, it was a great discussion. Thanks a lot for that. So staying curious, ability to identify a set of problems and then breaking it down to smaller problems, going behind them to actually make things happen, hustling, and also knowing when to graduate from a hustler to more of a manager and a process oriented team leader, and the value of starting early. think that's these are some of the main takeaways.
And the last one I would like to just add is playing a good combination of short term and long term.
Okay.
So have a very long view in life, like I said, have a very long lens towards doing things. So associate with the right people, those long relationships, and play long term games with them. Play long term games with like long term people. At the same time, have that short term speed of execution as well. So execute in short term, but think long term. I think the right combination of short term and long term is very useful in life.
Thanks a lot for taking out the time and also interacting with our students. Our students also,
of course,
enjoyed interacting with you.
Such an inquisitive tribe of students. I love chatting with them, and I'm so excited about the future of Rishihood University.
I think unka curiosity wala part to sorted hai. Now we have to enable them to become problem solvers, and I think they are very excited about making things happen.
I'm sure they will.
And I hope that आप जिस तरह से भी काम कर रहे हैं आप काम करते रहें बढ़ते रहें. So much to learn from you.
Very kind of you.
Thank
really
you so much.